the local station. The morning show starts now.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for starting your week with us. It is the big day before the elections. We have a lot to get to this morning.
It's 20 minutes away from the top of the hour. Applying for a job can be stressful. A lot of times an employer will do a background check before they hire you.
Take a look at why you should run a background check on yourself before someone else does. That's coming up next. The ins and outs of background checks, including the reason why you might want to run one on yourself before someone else does.
New at 6, Nikki explains why your biggest concern should be the number of mistakes that can come back on these reports.
You know, it's estimated that more than 25% of background checks have an error. So if you're applying for a job and someone's running a check, a little more than 1 in 4 will come back with something that's incorrect. Usually this happens when they use automated computer systems that are just searching through your records through databases. In fact, this is exactly what happened to Linda Martin when she applied for a job a few years back. She had been divorced for 15 years, but a computer database accidentally matched her up with someone who had her old name, Linda Shepard, and also had her same birth date. The problem? They definitely didn't have the same criminal history.
It was somebody named Linda Shepard in Ohio who had a felony charge. I mean, it was horrible. I think it was a murder charge. I'm like...
And you had to go through what to make sure to prove that that wasn't you?
I had to send in my driver's license. I had to send in a copy of my divorce papers and my marriage papers.
Now, Linda was able to correct that information with the company that was doing the background check, but it still took time and effort. But when the incorrect information is on your formal record, like your credit report or your criminal history, it is even more work to fix that. Coming up at 7 this morning, the things that typically come back on a background check and the information that can't be released without your written permission. Then at 8, what to do if there is a mistake on your background check. We'll walk you through that step by step. At 9, we're talking to the Better Business Bureau about the best companies to use for background checks and the background check scams that you need to be aware of.
That's ahead. Plus, this morning, we are looking at background checks. They use computerized databases, which can be inconsistent.
Which means there could be mistakes on your background check. At 7:40, the information that should be included in any background check about you.
And next this morning, we are looking into background checks and what to do if they come back with incorrect information. What should turn up in these reports? Next.
Whether it's for job security, clearance, or maybe you just want some history on a new boyfriend or girlfriend, background checks are a way to get detailed information.
But exactly what comes back when you run a background check? How much can people find out? This morning, Nikki is doing a series of reports on background checks, and she's here now to tell us more about what should be included in these reports.
So here's the thing, it's not really a simple answer. What you find on a background check depends on who is doing it and the purpose. As we showed you at 6 a.m., online checks that use computerized databases can be a nightmare and can be filled with inconsistencies. They've accidentally matched people with the same name and birth date. So this hour, we want to show you what should come back on a good, detailed background check. In fact, we turn to one of Jacksonville's top private investigators.
We can look at anything, really. I mean, credit history, rental history, check writing history, criminal history, address history, all those play a factor.
But certain things, like a credit report, are kept private unless you consent to hand them over in a background search. In order not to miss any information, JMA Investigative Services always starts with a generalized search to pinpoint every place a person has lived.
And then we're going to check county records, we're going to check state background criminal records, and then we're also check federal records. Some crimes that could occur locally may be a federal crime.
Having someone like Askew do the background check will cost you close to $200 on average. You'll see cheaper prices for online services, but be careful.
As we know, if it's on the internet, it's not necessarily true, and that kind of defeats the purpose when you're paying for a service that really is just a compilation of data found on the internet or maybe public records. But the key to remembering public records is it's only as accurate as the person that entered it.
And that brings us to our story coming up at 8 a.m. this morning. What if there is a mistake on your background check? This happens a lot. We'll tell you step by step how to get that information corrected. Then at 9, These background checks require you to give out personal information, which could really leave you vulnerable. We're talking to the Better Business Bureau about the common background check scams and what you need to do to protect yourself.
It's 35 minutes after 8. All morning, we have been helping you find out about unexpected failed background checks. One woman had a felony accidentally show up on her record after a database mistakenly matched her to a convicted criminal. What you can do to fix these mistakes. Next.
Could be your worst nightmare. You apply for a dream job only to find out your background check comes back and it's negative.
So this morning, we have been helping you find out more about how these checks work and the mistakes that often turn up. At 6 a.m., we introduced you to this woman who had a felony accidentally turn up on her report. Databases mistakenly matched her to a convicted criminal with the same name and birthday. Fixing these types of mistakes isn't always easy either. That's why Nikki Kimbleton is here to show us how to do it.
So your first step is pretty simple. If somebody runs a background check and it comes back with a problem, you need to get a copy. Federal law requires they give you one, and then your battle begins. You'll want to contact the screening company, find out if they made the mistake and maybe matched you to the wrong person. Fill out the dispute forms, get all of your correct information together. Under law, they have 30 days to investigate and fix this mistake. Now, if this information was incorrectly given to them, your fight gets a little tougher. For example, if there's an error on your criminal history, your credit or tax history, you might need professional help. The most common mistakes would come back on your credit report. You can dispute these on your own, but it's a lot of paperwork and time. Josh Askew is a private investigator that does background checks for clients. He was turning up so many credit history errors, he started a side business, a credit repair company. He gave us some insight on the 3 credit bureaus and how they operate.
They make money to report negative items on the consumer. And that's why the Fair Credit Reporting Act is supposed to protect that, which allows the consumer to dispute those items. And also that the inaccuracies are not the credit bureau's problem, they're your problem, the consumer. It's your responsibility to stay on top of it.
Attorney John Phillips agrees.
If you have a mortgage foreclosure on your record and you've never had been foreclosed upon, that's a paperwork issue that can be fixed. The more complicated the problem, the more complicated the solution.
For example, if your identity is stolen, then at the very least, you should contact an attorney for advice. One of Phillips' clients had her Social Security number stolen by someone who was working as an exotic dancer in another state.
That created an issue with taxes because she wasn't paying taxes on the money she never knew that she never earned.
Once you challenge this incorrect information, it could take a while to get it fixed. That's why all the professionals we talk to suggest running a background check on yourself every couple of years. The thing here is, though, be super careful what company you use and what information that you hand over online. Coming up at 9 a.m., the head of the Better Business Bureau is going to be here in studio to tell us how you can pick the right company to do this background check, also which ones to avoid.
If you'd like to see any of Nikki's other stories that aired this morning, including hearing from a victim of a failed background check, just look on the morning page of newsforjax.com.
All morning long, we've been doing special reports on some things that you didn't know about background checks. Now, the head of the Better Business Bureau is here to answer questions. That's coming up.
All right, thank you, Mark. So all morning long, we've been giving you the ins and outs of background checks, including the reason why you may want to run one on yourself before somebody else does. Joining me now is Tom Stevens, president of the Better Business Bureau of Northeast Florida. Tom, thank you for coming in to talk to us about this.
My pleasure.
You know, in researching for this story, I see a lot of people advertising for background checks online, but we need to be really careful about which company we choose.
Right, because many of those instant result cheap background checks miss a lot of stuff and they return a lot of false results. There's no way you can do a background check in a minute. It's a process that's going to take several days. It's going to cost more than $39. So you got to be careful about that.
And that is very interesting. That's what I discovered, that, you know, to get a really good, decent background check, it could cost you as much as $200. And it always helps to go through an individual that is looking up that information. So that's important not just for, you know, the consumer, but also an employer that is looking to get accurate information. We talked to one woman who had a felony on her record because a database came back and matched her name to someone else.
Correct. And many times the local databases will just use last name and the first 2 or 3 digits of the first name in matching that's what the That's what the cheap searchers use. So they'll come back with something that is completely false because of that.
All right. Also, too, you said that there's a scam out there that that really it was shocking to me that people need to look out for with this.
There's actually a couple of them. They're really employment scams. And what happens, let's say you're looking for a job and you've got your resume posted on one of the job boards, and you get an unsolicited inquiry. And so they tell you that, okay, we're interested in you. They do an interview, even phone interview, and they say, you need to pay for a background check, and we need you to put $89 or $99 or $100 or whatever on a preloaded card and give us the number so we can pay for your background check. Well, that's two red flags right there.
Right.
Number one, the preloaded card. Number two, no legitimate company is going to make a potential employee pay for their own background check. So it's obviously a scam.
So in addition to this, you are suggesting people be very leery about giving any information that typically goes on a background check, because that stuff, like your social security number, driver's license, I mean, all the stuff that we warn people never to give out.
You're giving people the keys to the kingdom, basically, when you give them all that information. So be very careful about that.
How often is it that information comes back incorrectly?
With the cheap results, probably more than half the time.
Yeah.
And maybe what they send you is correct, but they missed 50%.
So I think this is what you always tell me. If it sounds too good to be true,
It probably is. Yeah, exactly.
And just use the common sense.
Right.
All right, Tom Stevens with the Better Business Bureau. We really appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can see my series of reports on background checks. They've been airing all morning long. They are on the morning show page of news4jax.com right now.